Hello everybody, it's Denise from God's Third Acre, and I just thought I'd bring you along with me today. I am making the best ever refrigerator dill pickles. So I've got, can't see it here, I'll try to bring you in a little bit. But I've got my sink of cucumbers, washing them, and I've already started cutting them up and putting them in my bowl here. So I'll bring you along with me for just a little bit. But I'm washing the pickles. I've got all different sizes. I've got these little ones, and then I've got the monsters. So what I'm doing is, you want to, from what I've read, as far as keeping your pickles crisper, you want to cut off the little blossom end, because there's some kind of, I don't know what it is, but there's something in that blossom end that makes them turn soft. So I'm just going through and cutting off the blossom ends of these cucumbers, and I'm gonna make, I've got 3 half-gallon jars out. I make them in the half-gallon jars. The recipe I have calls for that it makes a gallon. So I don't have a gallon jar, so I just use my half-gallon jars. And Russell and I love these refrigerator dill pickles. This is absolutely the best dill pickle recipe I've ever eaten. And I even tried, I did a batch a couple weeks ago that I used the brine from this, and I ended up canning the pickles. So I'm anxious to see how those turn out. So I'm going to keep cutting the ends off of these, and actually I need to, I'll keep cutting the ends off of these, and then I'll pull you back when I start mixing the brine together so you can get the recipe for that. Okay, I'm going to mix my brine up here. Now, the recipe that I have said that the brine wasn't quite enough to fill the gallon jars, so I'm making 1.5 times the recipe so that I can get a full jar. So the recipe calls for 3 cups of water. So I'm making that 1.5 times, so I've got 4.5 cups of water. I'll just give you the recipe with the 1.5 times so you don't have to worry about it. So there's 4.5 cups of water, 3 cups of white vinegar, and then I've got a bunch of spices and stuff in here. So I'll tell you what I've got. I've got 3/8 of a cup of salt, 2 or 3 tablespoons of sugar, about 1.25 teaspoons of cumin, 1.5 teaspoons of peppercorns, 3/4 teaspoon of turmeric, 3 cloves, or you can use about 3/8 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 2 bay leaves, or you can use a bay leaf and a half. I just put 2 in there. So we're going to bring this to a boil and simmer for 5 minutes, and while that's going on, I'm going to blanch my cucumbers in boiling water and then put them in ice water. So let's get this on the stove, and I'll start blanching my cucumbers. Okay, my water has come to a boil, so I'm going to grab my container of cucumbers and dump them in. This is a Tupperware cake taker, and it's overflowing. So let's dump them in. Some of them I've already halved and quartered because they were so big, and that makes them a little closer to the same size. I probably shouldn't have just dumped them in because hot water splashed, but anyway, it's done. So these have to blanch for 5 minutes, so I'm going to turn my timer on to 5 and get that started. Stir these up a little bit. See, I've got some that are about that size that are whole, and then I've got some that I cut in half, and I've got a few that I cut into quarters because they were just really big. So we'll see. I've done it this way before where I pre-cut them before I blanched it. That gets them closer to about the same size so the blanching is equal on it. So we'll go for 5 minutes. I thought I started it. Maybe I did. We'll go for the 5 minutes and then I'll pull them out. My brine is coming up to a boil. It has to boil for 5 minutes too, so this is perfect timing. We'll come back when we're ready to fill the jars. Okay, the timer just went off. I'm going to start getting these cucumbers out of here, and I've got a sink full of ice water. So I'm just going to dump them in the ice water to stop the cooking. And I turned off the burner on my brine. It boiled for 5 minutes. So I'll finish getting all these cucumbers out of here, and then we'll start with the fun part, which is packing the jars. Okay, now for the fun part. I've got my cucumbers cooling off in the sink here. They're doing pretty well. And I'm gonna get my jars ready. They've been washed and, you know, they're clean. So I had a dill forest this year. I planted a few dill plants last year. This year, I had a whole bed of volunteer dill plants come up. So this is just a small amount of the dill that I have. I have another little jar that's already full, and I probably still have 90% of my dill left to harvest. So if anybody needs dill, let me know. I have it. All right, so usually I pick a fresh head of dill and put 1 or 2 heads of dill in each jar. But what I'm going to do this time, I've got so much of these seeds. I'm going to use the dill seed, and I'm going to put, about a tablespoon into each jar. That might be too much. I don't know. I really like dill. My cousin who makes this recipe says for a gallon, she uses a tablespoon of dill and 4 cloves of garlic. So I figure I'm going to put a tablespoon in each jar. Now I'm going to add, I think I'm going to add 3 cloves of garlic. Some of these are pretty small. So I've got 1 big one and 2 small cloves of garlic in each jar. I'm just going to start with 2 jars. And then I start packing them. So the way I pack it, I start with my bigger, like spears and halves, and start putting them down the side of the jar. It's nice. My hands are really big, and I can fit them in this wide mouth jar. They'll go in all the way, so I can really get stuff packed down in it well. So kind of hold it on its side and just keep sliding them in like a puzzle. So there's a method to my madness here. I'm putting all the smaller ones in, and then I put the halves in, and then I use the spears to kind of fill in some of the holes. So you don't want to pack them too tight. I had some that kind of ended up a little mushed in this last batch because I was trying to pack so much into it. Now I'm going to add some of my whole ones that are just a little bit smaller than what I've packed in there. Excuse me for my voice, but it's allergy season, I guess, says I'm having a lot of trouble. All right, so we just keep packing. You want to keep about 1 inch head space so you've got room for your liquid. You don't have to worry about siphoning because we're not canning them. These are just refrigerator dills. So see, I'm getting the jar pretty full, and I still have a bunch of cucumbers in the sink. So we'll just kind of shove some of those little ones in where I've got holes. And I'll put a couple of little ones right on top. Okay, so there's my first jar filled. I'm going to go ahead and fill my second jar, and then after I do that, then I'm going to use the brine. So I kept some about this size. How long is that? Oh, I don't know. It's not too long, maybe 3 inches or so. Whole, because I like whole pickles. But then I had this monster one that got cut into spears. And I had some other ones that got cut into halves. Just kind of use your own judgment, or if you like big spears, you could leave them into big spears if you like them that way, or big whole dills if you like them that way. I just decided to do it this way. And I have to tell you, these, I made them for the first time last year. My cousin Debbie gave me this recipe for refrigerator dills, and I guess a neighbor of hers had given it to her. And she said, these are just the best refrigerator pickles. I had never done refrigerator pickles before, so I thought, well, why not give it a try? And oh my goodness, we fell in love with these. So I asked Debbie if she thought I could use this recipe and can it. And she said, well, I don't see why not. You know, it's got the brine, it's got the acidity of the vinegar, it's got the salt in it. So I made a recipe and canned it. Now they're going to have to sit for a little while because I've still got pickles left from last year. Unfortunately, my ones from last year did not turn out very good. And I have no idea what recipe I used. I don't know if I used a Mrs. Wages batch. I don't think I did. I had some that turned out okay, and some of them are just, they taste really salty. So Russell said, well, as we open them, we can taste them, and if they don't taste like we like, then the chickens can get those cucumbers. All right, so if I could find one more, there's another small one. All right, so I've got my 2 jars packed, and I'm gonna go get the brine. Let me go grab the brine. Okay, I've got my brine here. Now when I put the brine in, I usually try to divide up some of the spices that are in the bottom. So I had 2 bay leaves, so I'm going to make sure each jar gets a bay leaf. So there's one in that jar. And there's one in that jar. And then the rest of the spices I just kind of eyeball, because I've got those cloves in the bottom, and I've got peppercorns. So I'm trying to make sure I get peppercorns in each one. This just smells so good. Now, once you get these filled up, you want to, excuse me, you want to put your lids on the jars and let them sit on the countertop for 24 hours. Then after they have sat for 24 hours, you put them in the refrigerator. And it says that they can be used for up to a month. I have to tell you, I had some last year that we probably had for 6 months, and I was still eating on them, and they were still good. So use your own judgment, but the recipe does say they're good for a month. All right. So I've still got probably 2 cups of brine left. So I may do, there's one lid. I have to grab another lid. But I may do some pints, or a couple of pints with the pickles I have left, and just do some pint refrigerator pickles, because I really don't have enough left to process a batch. So we'll go from there, and I'll finish this up. Like I said, put the lids on, let them sit on the counter for 24 hours. After that, put them in the refrigerator. And you want to wait about 3 or 4 days before you start eating on them, because you want all those flavors to mix in to those cucumbers. But these are so delicious, and I will try to remember to put the recipe in the comments below so that you can have that. But I hope you'll try this. These are wonderful. I love them. And fortunately, I can have them with my new way of eating. They've got a little bit of sugar in it, which I really shouldn't have, but I only put in 2 tablespoons or 3 tablespoons for the whole batch of brine, so that's really not a whole lot of sugar. I imagine you could probably just leave the sugar out or substitute stevia. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video with me today and making refrigerator dill pickles. You can add other stuff to it if you want. You could add jalapenos, you could put some carrots in there, onion, whatever, but I just like them like this. So until next time, this is Denise from God's Third Acre saying happy pickling and God bless.